I think AI is here to stay. I think it's going to ramp up and it's going to get more and more woven into what we do every day.
I don't think you can automate everything in a role, but like the three horizons is like workflow optimization, bringing AI into the things we currently do, and then trying to disrupt us completely with new products.
One employee to be able to do 5 employees worth of output, however you see that fit. Now, the reality is AI is going to be the largest contributor to that.
AI has made content effectively free, and now it's also made technology effectively free as well. We are back with another episode of the Do As I Say, Not As I Did podcast, where we answer real and often insane Reddit questions about growing your startup. And today we're joined by Marcus Zeltzer, the founder of Yellow Canary. Yellow Canary is disrupting the traditional approach to workforce compliance with its cutting-edge automation solutions. Marcus is deeply experienced in regulatory compliance and industrial relations. He's passionate about using AI and emerging technologies to simplify compliance, improve governance, and reshape the future of work in Australia. Now, Marcus has had very big success in the startup space and growing businesses in Australia. But I actually first came across Marcus because he bought 4 copies of my game. And I was like, what the hell? And so I got this order, and it's still to date my biggest order ever. So if you want to come on my podcast, just buy 5 copies of my game and you can come on my podcast. But he bought 4 and I was like, what the hell? So then I also didn't know how to ship 4 things to where Marcus lived, because where Marcus lives, which I won't share the address, obviously, all these shipping things I used didn't work. So I'm going through all these fucking different shipping companies to try and work out how to ship 4 games to Marcus. And I never emailed him. I never emailed Marcus and said, hey man, I'm so sorry. But then Marcus hits me up on LinkedIn just saying hey, is this a scam? I just bought 4 games off you. I was like, I'm so sorry. But I eventually got in my games. And then we just started chatting, and I just quickly learned about everything Marcus is doing, and I was super psyched to have him on the show. So Marcus is probably one of my favorite guests to date. And yeah, mate, thank you so much for coming on. I'm so excited to have you.
It's my pleasure, Joel. And look, the game was worth the wait. So I'm glad I eventually got it and that it wasn't a scam. And that's a really interesting acquisition strategy for new podcast guests.
Yeah, I love it, man. My game, definitely not a scam. I'm going to put that on my next print of the box.
Yeah. And I've been told that I need to confirm that it isn't a scam. So.
Exactly. Marcus is getting a clip now on everything we sell from here. Awesome. Well, let's jump in. So I mentioned this off air, but we're doing a new section. I'm inspired by Caleb Priestley, always implementing new sections on his podcast. But this is a new segment. I'm going to call it 10 words. I maybe need a better segment name, but essentially, I'm just going to say 10 words or phrases, and I just want you to tell me what immediately comes to mind for you.
Word association game.
Word association.
Let's go.
Exactly. All
right. This is scary. What do you got for me, Joel?
Is it ever enough?
No.
Great. Startups are freedom.
Incorrect. I'm happy to elaborate.
No, I agree. I want no elaboration.
I've always said, when I go speak at conferences, I'm like, don't bother. Just go get a job at Deloitte or EY. You get paid a lot of money. Get to go to Davos. You do PowerPoint slides. It's a much easier existence. Sure, there's stress, but it's a much easier existence.
Yeah. Elon Musk.
Complicated.
Yeah, good. Inbox zero.
Must have.
What's your inbox right now?
I think it's running at 22 unread messages.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
Sales forecasting.
Fraught.
CEO or servant?
Both.
I think I'm leaning towards CEO now. I think I was probably too far in servant part before. Venture capital.
Best if you can avoid it.
It was just one bad quarter.
Bullshit.
We don't need your money.
Also bullshit.
Love it. All right, that's it. That's our 10 words today, 10 phrases today. I
like it.
Yeah, I'm going to keep doing it. It's fun, man. I like it. I don't know if anyone else does, but I'm enjoying it.
Well, I think it's best if your guests don't know the words and you shift the words up.
It's always different so far. Perfect, man. All right, so let's jump into the challenges today. First one is, I want your thoughts on how AI is going to be integrated into the workforce. Is it all hype, or is it really happening? Is AI taking over, or is it all just media attention? I'm looking for more data on what AI integration in the workforce actually looks like. I'm currently researching to find different skills that have been impacted. from Effective Drawing 67. And I'm interested, right? Like, I think it's pretty clear we're not in a hype cycle. Like, shit is actually fucking crazy and different and changing. But how are you seeing it actually integrated into the workforce, especially in a pretty fraught space, which is compliance and regulation?
Yeah, look, I think this is not a fad and it's not going away. And I think it's easy to call something that's new, like to say that something that's new is just going to be a flash in the pan. It's easy to discredit something by saying, oh, it's not particularly accurate or I didn't like this particular response. So I think AI is here to stay. I think it's going to ramp up and it's going to get more and more woven into what we do every day. And if you think about it, we used to get grid paper and we'd write numbers in it and draw up ledgers and that sort of stuff. And then we went to spreadsheets and, we use spreadsheets now and then platforms like Xero went in with cloud accounting and I don't think there's an accountant in Australia that gets paid to prepare a BAS. The
True.
expectation is you click the button. So I think it's only going to continue to develop, and I think that you have to embrace it. I don't think that the time for waiting and seeing is gone. In compliance, I think it's a really interesting space. I think like with our business, one of the things that we're very sensitive to is data sovereignty. So it means that as opposed to data security. So it's like, where is your data stored and who has access to it? One of the big challenges when we look at AI in our business is that we need to maintain that data sovereignty. And a lot of the large language models that you might use in your daily life can't region lock data. So we find ourselves in the position where we're manually updating LLMs in order to have that functionality within our environment without compromising the sovereignty of our clients' data. So I think it's in compliance, and in regulatory compliance, we've got a bit of a ways to go, and there's some clunky workarounds, but the force multiplication effect is incredible. And I think right now, human in the loop is where it's at. And so, look, I think it's here to stay. You have to embrace, otherwise, you're going to get left behind.
Are you seeing AI being integrated into compliance yet, or are there still like just too much fear around things like data sovereignty, like that are preventing it from really happening?
Well, the way we use it, I can't talk to other tech vendors, but the way that we use it is for reporting. So, we get like we're in payroll, we do payroll audits. So we get all this garbage data that comes out of a payroll system or a workforce management system. It's really hard to do anything with that until it's, into our platform and then into an environment where it's all harmonized and cleansed. But once we get it to that point, we get a heap of insights and we can generate board reports and we can generate all that sort of stuff with large language models. We can also do automated quality assurance and quality control checks. And at this point, that's probably the best use case for it. I think in time that'll expand, but I think it's sort of, in compliance, you've got to do it judiciously and you've got to do it, you've got to err on the side of caution, but also be a bit bold.
Yeah, I definitely, I guess like the way I think about it for me, and I work in higher education, borderline in compliance as well, and it's like I'm kind of always thinking about AI on almost like three layers or three horizons. One is like, how do we use AI to like change the way we operationally function? Like, what are our
Mm.
workflows that should be changing all the time, and we need to constantly invest in that, and like just small things like engineers just should be using something like Cursor right now. If they're not, it's just like, what the fuck, right? There's just free money on the
But
table that you're leaving behind.
But do you think it's because a lot of folks don't really have a good handle on what their workflows are or what they should be, and so therefore by bringing any automation or AI into it, it just kind of creates chaos at scale?
I mean, I don't think you can automate everything in a role, but like I think
Yeah.
like I guess the three horizons is like workflow optimization, bringing AI into the things we currently do, and then trying to
Mm.
disrupt us completely with new products. But like if we talk more about like, is it just going to cause chaos? I think the answer is like uh probably in some areas, but
Yeah.
like if that's the case, it's like, well, what the fuck are we doing anyway? Right? Like
Well,
if you're so if we're so disorganized that we can't actually automate workflows and all that kind of stuff, it's like we need that chaos, right? We need to walk through that fire to get to the other side to get those efficiency gains.
And look, what I say to my team is like assume in 2 years' time, and maybe that's overs, but in two
Yeah,
years' time, there will be no value in the technology that we've spent $20.5 million building.
yeah,
Like the value of the technology will be zero because of the ubiquity of and
yeah,
availability of tech. So what
yeah,
are we going to do then? So I
yeah,
pose it to them as a question, and you say, okay, cool. Well, what do we have that's a defendable moat? And in our case, we have a huge repository of workforce planning data
yeah,
that's been unified and harmonized so that you can actually get some insight out of the metadata that we've created over the top. Of
yeah,
course, we would never touch our clients' data in that way, but there's a hell of a lot of metadata that's been created. So I think assume, like my advice for folks is like assume that AI will render the tech that you have to be worthless.
yeah,
What's your defendable position at that point? What's your ecosystem? What's your network effect? What are you going to do then? And I think that's a great conversation to have. And even if it takes 10 years instead of two, fine. If it takes 6 months, well, you got to pedal really hard. But
yeah,
there's no avoiding it.
yeah, yeah. Definitely, like I don't know whether 10 years ago or whatever, like content just became ubiquitous. Like any content you want became available. AI has made content effectively free, and
Mm,
now it's also made technology effectively free as well. Like it's crazy, like just how, and like all these replicant stuff, like they don't build something you can just release. Like it's still shit. Like it
yeah,
needs work, right? Like you can't one shot a lot of stuff. Like maybe really simple apps, but it's just getting so good now, right? And
yeah.
like it definitely needs to change.
But
Um,
I encourage my staff to, we've got a team of about 65 people, and I'm trying to get as the founder and the CEO, like I'm the number one cheerleader, and I'm trying to get everybody on board with AI. And I talk about how I use it in my personal life. So, like, I'm 42 years old, so clearly I'm going through a midlife crisis. I'm doing triathlons, and I use like an LLM to create my training plan. Out of that drops my nutritional requirements. I get a box of veggies and food delivered every week. I take a photo of that, and then the LLM creates the meal plan for the week
I
with the
love it.
recipes that meet the macros that I need in order to, don the lycra and ride my bicycle for 3 hours, or swim in the ocean. And you think about that, and it's kind of a bullshit example, but you think about the alternative. I'd be there like with a calorie counting app or something like that. It's just all too hard.
Yeah,
And look, it's probably not right, but whether I get 3,000 calories or 3,200 calories, does it actually really matter?
yeah.
No. The point is, it's done, and then I can do what I need to do after that.
I'm interested. You know, you're this cheerleader, okay, and you're giving an example. How do you actually make sure people in your company are building with AI, building AI, like changing, right? Because like sometimes I think like, what's the benefit to someone actually doing that? Like, say
Mm.
if I'm just working for a company and if I'm not really that interested in AI, like what's the point, right? Like I'm still getting paid. I I do my job. I'm getting my results. Like it's just extra work for me to try and implement and like fully disrupt stuff. And I don't own the company. Like, how are you making sure your whole company is actually leaning into it?
It comes down to company values and alignment to those values. And I always thought that was just kind of rubbish that was that was perpetuated by like management consultant types. And until you see it go wrong and you hire the wrong people or you paint yourself into a corner, it doesn't really ring true. So we've got values, they're articulated. We do one member of our team every week picks one of the values and posts on a Wednesday morning on Slack and explains what that value means to them. But so we've got the values, and we've got a program at Yellow Canary called Canary Pairs, where we partner people from different sides of the business. So you're either in a canary pair or in a canary square, and you get together and you have an individual goal statement that's devolved down from the overall corporate goals. And the number one thing on that list is safety. So safety in the workplace. The second one is values alignment. So we get people talking about this all the time.
Mm,
And so some of our core values are like focusing on solutions and being bold and hungry for growth. We hire people. Our interview process is probably too long, right?
mm,
There's 3 stages. The second interview that you do is purely about values alignment. So a
mm,
group of canaries will, literally chat to you and see if are you aligned to the values, will you live by the values? So, bold and hungry for growth, focusing on solutions, AI sits into that. And I think it's about making it really accessible. And I think, one of the best bits of advice I got from another founder and CEO was you need to model the behaviors that you want your team to exhibit. And I'm not always particularly good at it. Like I work too much, I sleep too little, I travel a lot, and I wouldn't expect my staff to do that. But when it comes to adoption of AI, I'm constantly, sending chat GPT prompts or articles that I see to try and weave it into the fabric of what we're doing to make it less scary. Because otherwise it just becomes a barrier and people aren't going to do it.
and I guess like I think values alignment makes sense, right, for anything you're trying to achieve. But do you now like pushing AI as one of your values?
Not specifically, but it's one of our corporate goals. So, we look at the two big lift areas that we're working on at the moment are days in pipeline and days in implementation.
Mm-hmm.
Um, as you know, like in the enterprise end of the market, you're kind of at the behest of your prospects. They've got a decision-making process, they've
Yeah,
got budgeting cycles. We work with
it's lumpy
massive,
revenue.
yeah, and you just wait. And there's not like I can't ring the CEO of an organization that has 10,000 employees and tell them to hurry the hell up and sign my agreement.
Yeah.
So we're kind of so days, but we look at we've piloted it a lot in marketing. So I've got a phenomenal marketing manager in Vanessa Lee, and she's been one of the real early adopters, and she kind of exemplifies what we want to do from an AI perspective. And then days in implementation, there's a whole bunch of enabling technologies that we've been using to cut that down so that we can get somebody in the door. Days in implementation starts when the agreement is signed and finishes when the first data comes out of the system. So when you have something to put AI in context, it's a lot easier to actually approach that
Mm,
as opposed to like saying, oh, well, we just want to use AI. So I
yeah.
say, our goal is 5 to 1. So I want, one employee to be able to do 5 employees worth of output, however you see that fit. Now, the reality is AI is going to be the largest contributor to that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I guess like one thing that we're doing at the moment, which it's early days, but I've just said like literally 100% of like the pieces of work our product team releases, and like we're still trying to work out like exactly what the size of this to include. It's not every ticket because some tickets are like just tiny, right? But
Mm,
every like even smallish piece of work that gets delivered has to have some component of AI in it. Like,
mm.
even if it doesn't even really make sense, I'm just like, we're in this phase right now, which is like, we need to get the reps in. We need to just be like, everything we build, it needs to be like second nature, just like it's built with AI and it's AI is part of this feature. So it's like, we've just updated, I don't know, like put emojis in chat. For some reason, we're recommending you AI based emojis or whatever it is, right? Like it just like
Yeah.
I just really want to get the reps in right now so we can actually get super, super, super comfortable on that. Because I heard this quote the other day, which I kind of scared me. They said like every business built pre ChatGPT release in 22 or whatever it was is a legacy business. And I
Mm,
was like, fuck, that's so true, right? Like I thought I was like
yeah.
this cool business. I was like, I'm not really, right? Technology has changed fundamentally. And it's like it's hard to transition from being a legacy business into being like it has to be called what we do. And I feel like being in compliance is a tough way to actually embrace that too.
Yeah, I think I'll come back to compliance, but I think that there'll be an investment play, and I've already started to see this pop up a bit, where you have like private equity funds that have a phenomenal end-to-end AI stack that go and buy like truly legacy, like pre-SaaS businesses,
True.
and then because what they want is client base and data,
Yeah.
and so that's going to be the new dynamic. I think in compliance, I think it moves a lot slower. Like the adoption to SaaS in compliance is probably 5 to 10 years behind where it might have been in
Yeah.
ERP or something like that. Compliance will move a lot slower, and large corporates will move a lot slower. I mean, what I found with our organization, because we work with big companies, like you do. It's sort of like they're far more prone to say, "Hey, we've got this workflow. We want your software to adapt to our workflow." Whereas if you look at the sort of SME end of the market, they're happy to adopt whatever the tech vendor's workflow is, and off you go there. So I think there'll be a lagging, like compliance will be a lagging space, but I think, the reality is, I think we're all legacy businesses, and it's, I think, we entered the market in 2017. Um, I think the thing that was really wild was when we actually started to get people that were entering the market after us trying to disrupt us.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, we were the disruptive brand. We were the ones, like most of our growth in the early days came at the expense of the big four accounting firms. But then there were new tech companies that were coming into the market that we saw in tenders, and we're thinking, oh, but we're the cool kids. We wear t-shirts. It's like, it's fine,
Yeah.
right? And then you go, oh, I'm currently being disrupted. And I think, there'll be more of that to come. And so you got to understand what you're defendable. What do you have that somebody can't build with AI tomorrow?
Yeah. I mean, it's a big question, right? So if I try and bring this back for effective drawing 67, how's AI going to be integrated in the workforce? And I think the answer is just like, it's just going to be integrated everywhere. I think
Yep.
every workflow is going to continue to change. And I feel like the real thing is just like, you just need to be leaning in, because if you don't
Mm.
lean in, you're going to just get left behind, and your company will die, or you're like, depending on the area, like if you're in educational compliance, like you probably have maybe a little bit longer, but like you're still going to be dead. like someone
Yeah.
will come along and eat your breakfast.
Yeah, for sure. And look, you only have to look at how it's happened in your personal life. And
Yeah.
people that say that sort of stuff, you mentioned Siri, and okay, yeah, I didn't quite realize that
Yeah.
that was AI.
Mm.
So yeah, I think it's here to stay, and you just got to embrace it.
Yeah. God, I love using it. I use it so much. Like
Mm.
I'm constantly in it. Um, awesome. All right. Well, we'll move on. I think we're trying for one more question. So, this question is: how do you handle regulatory compliance? So, I'm not even going to read it verbatim. I just want to tell you, in the startup space, compliance feels prohibitive, but
Mm.
there are just versions of compliance like SOC 2 or GDPR or like all this
Mm.
crazy stuff around the world. Like for just like startups getting started out, like you are now probably one of the strongest experts in the world to do with compliance. Like how can startups live in that world where it feels impossible?
Yeah, look, I've got a couple of different views here, and I'll try and distill it into something consumable. But I think, um, like I look at our own business, we carry multiple ISO certifications and SOC 2 and all that sort of stuff. The first point I'd make is that just because everybody has a driver's license doesn't make everybody a great driver. So you could have the ISO 27001 sticker on the box, but doesn't necessarily mean you have great hygiene. I think if you distill all of that down, it's there for a good reason. It gives you a framework to operate in. And the trap that you can fall into is just doing the absolute minimum required to meet certification. Uh, Compliance is always like children's shoes. They've got to be one size bigger than they need on the day so that you can grow into it. So I think look at what regulatory compliance you absolutely have to do. So I'll give you an example in our business. Before we had ISO and SOC, we would get these procurement questionnaires, and they're like 150 questions. And you get to one question and you'd say, "Do you have ISO certification?" And we would say no, and we'd get 450 extra questions
Mm.
that we'd have to go through. They were all worded slightly differently every single time. So for us, it was a ticket to play. If you don't need that ticket to play, then you'd have to have the question as you'd have to ask why you're actually doing the thing that you're doing. I think the other area um, that we've used, which I think is worthy of consideration, is partnering. So we're a tech vendor. We have a services team that exists to do implementations of our system. but we have third parties that can do implementations of our system. So we can use their certification in order to bid for, a large piece of work. So they're prime contractor, we're subcontractor. And I'm a big fan of partnerships as being a way to ladder up really quickly. But I think the reality is you need to get some advice, talk to people who have done it before. And I know, like, if we would have done ISO today, so like started again today, we would have done it very differently. And there's a lot more pre-work we would have done before we engaged with the folks that ended up doing our certification.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we've definitely not done ISO, but we've done SOC and a bunch of like small there's like so many layers to compliance, right? And I think the way I think about it is like I think there are a bunch of industries it doesn't matter, or like at least
Mm,
versions of your business you don't really need it, and that's fine. So just don't even fuck around with it. Like why? Like never do anything that your business doesn't have to do.
yeah,
um, and but if you are in an industry like where it makes sense, right? You're in compliance or education or healthcare, like compliance or fintech, even like compliance is going to be a part of it regardless. And I think like the thing that I kind of realized is like for a long time we're like, oh, compliance, like it's going to be this fucking big annoying thing. It actually wasn't as hard as we expected. We've only done SOC is the most extreme we went, but SOC 2 compliance, it was definitely work, but it wasn't crazy by any means. Like
yeah.
it was just like, okay, get these things in order. We're kind of doing a bunch of this stuff anyway. Like it just organizes it all a little bit better. And then it almost became like a bit of a superpower for us because they're like, oh shit, you're this quick moving startup and you have like this kind of compliance tick box. And it definitely helped with sales in a big way. And I mean, if you're doing tenders, you're just going to need for anything. If you're submitting a tender, you're going to need to have some kind of compliance shit, or you
Yeah.
have to, like you said, answer an additional 450 questions. So it wasn't as hard as I originally expect. I mean, it's not easy, right? Like, I'd rather just work on building the business, like with sales or product. But like, it definitely didn't seem as bad as I expected.
I think if you're in the enterprise space, don't listen to the consultants that are trying to sell you certification, right? Because they're inherently conflicted. Go and befriend, if you don't already have a friend in this space, go and befriend somebody who's a procurement manager
Mm.
and go and talk to them about the philosophy of enterprise procurement, because it's not actually as straightforward as you'd see. Like, it's easy to dismiss it as a box ticking exercise or something like that, but procurement people have an incredible amount of power, but they also have an incredible amount of knowledge, and they're also kind of universally ignored and hated by a lot of vendors because they exist sometimes to act as a buffer between the business and the vendor, so that they can come beat you up on terms, but then preserve the relationship with the principals who are going to give you instructions. But understand the procurement philosophy, understand the procurement limitations, and befriend one of these people, and get to know them and understand what makes them tick. Because out of that will drop out things like whether you need certifications and accreditation, and what happens if you don't have them, and that'll help formulate what Joel, to your point, what the bare minimums are and what the nice to haves are, and then you can make an informed decision about which path you take. Otherwise, you can hose an absolute bucket load of coin on getting certifications that look good on the website but don't necessarily deliver you what you want, which is time to cash flow, time to client, time to new product release.
Yeah. Well, if I bring this on a kind of a summary, like how do you handle compliance? I think the biggest and most important is like work out if you really need compliance tick boxes and which ones you have. And if you do, that's okay. Then just do it, and it won't be as hard as you actually think. Like the first time, it will be painful, but but keeping it after that, it is a whole lot easier. From my experience, again, only going up to SOC 2. But yeah, I love that idea. Make friends with procurement people in the space you work. I think that's probably the most important advice here, and probably supersedes every other advice I've ever given. It's like go make friends with the people who buy from you, or
Yeah.
ideally will buy from you, and you'll learn more than anything else.
Otherwise, you're just negotiating against yourself. And like, everything looks great in a spreadsheet or everything looks great on the whiteboard. But, and again, it's a similar philosophy they take to product development. Go talk to a customer and say, here's this rough and ready thing that I've built, scratched together. Do you like it? Would you use it? How much would you pay for it? Is
Yeah.
that more than $0?
Yeah.
It kind of gives you, again, all of the internal machinations are not worth anything compared to the value that you get from actually talking to people who are going to, cut a check, pay
Yeah.
money for your product.
I guess like if I just maybe step away from the Reddit questions a little bit, having much more experience in the enterprise space, which is like maybe a voice we haven't had on the podcast too much before. How do you deal with revenue targets and goals and sales in a, I guess, enterprise world? And for context, right, like for the audience, when you sell enterprise, sales cycles are so long. They're like, 6 to 24 months sometimes, or even longer in some cases. But like, so they're really long. So you need to really think about your sales and cash management in a different way. But like, I guess like for you, like I would just love to understand, like when you're thinking about sales, right? How do you think about forecasting? How do you think about lumpy revenue? Because you could have like a zero Q2 and a giant Q3 and still be on track
Yeah.
for the year.
Really hard to forecast. I mean, we're fortunate enough that we have, a base of recurring revenue, longer term contracts. We typically sell, well in excess of a year, as far as the term goes. So, I mean, obviously that gives you the predictability, that you need. But again, it's just old school pipeline metrics. We've got, opportunity pipeline split by opportunity stage. And I think it's very easy to get carried away with trying to factor revenue here and factor revenue there, based on gut feel. We just have some gates. I think there's like 6 stages in the opportunity pipeline. I should probably know that off the top of
Yeah.
my head, but it's really based on, have we had until we've had a conversation that involves dollars, shit doesn't make it into our pipeline. That's all sitting in the prospect funnel. That's not sitting in the early stage pipeline. And so we have very like regimented gates before you pass in there. We know our conversion rates. We know who we would need involved to buy because of the conversations that we've had with procurement people. We understand how budget gets allocated. And it's very hard for us because nobody has a payroll audit budget line item,
Yeah.
right? So we're like, okay, well, and we don't have a consistent procurer. So it's not like we sell to CFOs every time. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. We might sell to a general counsel. We might sell to the head of risk. We might be selling to the risk and audit committee. It just changes every single time. But until we know what our conversion rates are, and then we factor revenue based on that, and then we're always really conservative about timing, because a 90-day delay in enterprise is nothing.
Yeah.
I think we've probably got 4 or 5 current clients that spent over 1,000 days in pipeline.
Jeez, that's crazy.
And remember, they don't hit the pipeline until we've had a conversation about dollars,
Yeah.
right? So 1,000 days in pipeline. So what's the solution? You have more logos in pipeline. That's like, if it's going to lump around like this, you just got to have more of it. And so the fallback for us is, giving people multi-threading and giving people comfort within the organization that we know what we're doing and that we're the right partner for them, and that just takes time. And so yeah, I wish I had a really like snappy like
Yeah.
response
Yeah.
to that, but it's more pipeline, really simple pipeline hygiene and metrics, and just constantly looking back at it. And having a CFO, that was not something that we've had until recently. That's literally the best hire we've ever made, is actually having a CEO who understands it. CFO, who understands our industry and understands how our pipeline works, understands the enterprise sales cycle.
Do you feel like though, like I feel like, right, like this quarter we need to hit this target, and like you always
Mm.
feel this draw and this pressure to make something happen now, but like it feels like it's always disruptive because like we just have long sales cycles. So it's like whatever we close this quarter is, it's more about what we did a year ago than what we're doing this quarter.
But do you actually feel satisfied when you hit your quota for the quarter?
Never.
Well, but see, that's the point, right? Like
Yeah.
for me, it's size of pipeline and conversion will come.
Yeah.
And because there's limited ability to affect that conversion, you're largely a passenger. The only way you can ameliorate that is just by having more pipeline.
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, well, we're in contract negotiation is the last stage in our sales pipeline, and that's typically where it drags out.
Yeah.
Because you have lawyers squabbling about punctuation. Oh, that should be a semicolon. No, it should be a
Yeah.
full colon. Oh, we have to go away and seek instructions and
Yeah.
all the lawyer stuff. And that just takes time. So if I see that, like I go, oh, cool, it's in contract negotiation. I know that's going to close, right?
Yeah.
We will find a way. We'll squabble. Well, we've got two in-house lawyers that do the squabbling with the
Yeah.
other in-house lawyers. So then I go, okay, cool. Well, I need to go focus on early stage pipeline. So how am I going to
Yeah.
do that? Right. So I just change my focus based on once it gets to contract negotiation, I know we're going to get there.
Yeah.
So for me, that's as good as closed. I go focus and I leave that up to people that are good at doing that. And then I go back and look at early stage pipeline.
Love it, man. Well, that was great. I don't know if we ever share much about that on the show, so I think that's great insight. But that brings us to the end. So we'll do plugs. Last segment of the show. So, mate, what's going on? What do you want to plug right now? Business, books, podcasts, anything?
Look, I just want to plug lifestyle, right? So last sort of 8 months or so, I've taken fitness and health, which are not the same thing, really seriously. And I think for a founder, I'm training a lot of hours. You can't drink a lot of alcohol if you're going to get up at 4 o'clock and go for a 3 hour bike ride. So my advice for founders is have a look at lifestyle factors and, get fit. There's a reason why like Formula One race car drivers are the fittest humans on the planet, and they arguably sit in a chair. They need it for focus. They need it for everything. So yeah, I just want to plug exercise because it's not something that I'm going to make any money out of. But if you aren't doing it now, like get on board. Got to exercise every day.
Not a scam.
No, not a scam. It's not going to get lost in the mail somehow.
Yeah.
Plug in exercise. Also, like if the founders, there's a couple of founders on LinkedIn that, whenever I tune in, they always seem to have a habit of posting content that reflects how I feel at the time. It's almost uncanny. But Jason Lemkin, I went to SaaStr last year in London. I'm going to go again this year. I wish I could be in San Francisco in 10 days' time. But Jason Lemkin, founder of Echo Sign that became Adobe Sign, super good follow, very generous with all of his content. And then Howard Lerman, founder of Yext, current founder of Rome, also very generous, very big supporter of founders. They're the two that if you haven't, just go follow them on LinkedIn. They've got heaps of content. They're very responsive if you tag them. So that'd be my exercise. Jason and Howard. There's my shout outs.
Love it, man. Well, that's it, mate. Thank you so much for coming on today. What a fun conversation.
It's my pleasure, Joel. Anytime.
Well, that's just been another episode of the Do As I Say, Not As I Did podcast. We'll see you all next week.